Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome to another episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I'm your host, as always, Tony Defio, and I couldn't be more excited and stoked that you're joining me on this humid Friday night where I'm at live on YouTube. And before I begin, I'd really love for you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this show, subscribe to our channel. We bring you a live podcast every day. There's the Steelers Hangover with Brian Anthony Davis and yours truly on Monday nights at 8. There's the Scobro Show with Dave Schofield and his brother Rich every Tuesday evening. I believe it's 9 o'clock. There's the Curtain Call in the off season. In the regular season, what's that called in the regular season? It doesn't matter. You'll figure it out. With Michael Beck and Jeffrey Benedict. I'm just kidding. And Jeffrey Benedict. And Thursday night, there's a Steelers preview with Dave Schofield, Jeff Hartman, the editors. Senior editor is Jeff. I just found this out. He's the senior editor now, and Dave Schofield's the editor. Anyway, and Jeff Hart and Brian Anthony Davis, the podcasting manager, and what a great job they're all doing, bringing you content. And Michael Beck, Jeffrey Benedict. Of course, Friday night, there's this show. Saturday night, there's the Touchdown Under show with Maddie Peverall and Mark Davidson. And then there's the Sunday show, which is in the off season, and that's the Tales from 2 a.m. with the very famous Brian Anthony Davis Bad. And if you watched it last week, you had to have enjoyed it as much as I did. The Father's Day special with Brian's dad. He's a natural. I mean, I was really impressed by him. Way more natural than I am. And of course, his son Connor was on there. Who's probably going to take my job in a week. So it's a really good family when it comes to being naturals on the radio and in front of the camera. Just being natural entertainers, and it was really, really great. And Know Your Enemy. Thank you, Steeler Chick 46. Know Your Enemy. That's during the regular season. That's the Michael Beck and Jeffrey Benedict show. That's why you guys are awesome. And thank you for joining me in the live chat. There's Stacy Lynn, Steeler Chick 46. You guys are awesome. I can't wait to interact with you all tonight. And before I continue with that, I just wanted to continue talking about our great lineup of podcasts. And we have audio-only podcast, which you can find on any audio platform. iHeartRadio is my personal favorite. I have the app on my Roku channel. I listen to it all the time. It's really a hoot. I mean, I grew up dreaming of being on the radio, and now I could sit and listen to myself on a podcasting platform. It's crazy. But it's not just me. We have plenty of shows. There's the Retro Show with yours truly, Brian Anthony Davis. There's a Stat Geek with Dave Schofield. Let's Ride, the famous Let's Ride show 3 mornings a week with Jeff Hartman. There's the Live Mic with Michael Beck. Did I miss anything? The War Room with Maddie Peverall. I mean, we're bringing you more stuff as the season continues. We have more podcasts coming your way, more personalities. You're really going to love it. So please check that out. And you can find our live shows as well on any audio platform. And you can catch all of our live shows like this one on Facebook as well. We're new to Facebook within the last few months. So that's really been a hoot. And please check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website where we bring you news, commentary, film breakdown, anytime there's a transaction, anytime there's a trade, a release. Has that happened recently? Yeah. Anytime that stuff happens, we try to get it to you as fast as we can. I mean, believe me, I have the Slack channel. I'm pointing to my recliner over there. It's on my phone. We have the Slack channel. Anytime something happens, it's like, wow, my phone's blowing up. What's going on? And you see what's going on. It's like a major news. Those guys are on top of everything. So please check us out and tell your friends. As we like to say, Behind the Steel Curtain is your one-stop shop for all your Steelers needs. And it's for my money, it's the best Steelers site on the internet. So please check us out. And let's say hi to some more people in the live chat. There's Dave Shipley, the legend Dave. He says, hello, Tony and Behind the Steel Curtain Nation. That's right. George Teston, Nathaniel Sarati, Jared Devil, who always gives us the peace sign. I got to put this up. He puts it up every week, probably every show. He's a really dedicated fan. He gives us the peace sign. Team Money, my man Terry, Rod Young, Stacy, Steeler Chick. You guys are all awesome. EJ Lewis, my man Tony, says Steelers Pittsburgh. Russ Obenstein, Jared Devil, Lumberzack. Well, I haven't seen Lumberzack in a while. BMK Bully Mob Kennel. Wow, what a name that is. Now it's going, Tony. Let's go Steelers. That's right. I'm pumped. And of course, the first thing I wanted to talk about this. Wait a minute. Here's a big comment from Russ Obenstein. I'm going to put it up on the screen. I hope you don't disappoint me, Russ. Let's see what you say here. Last night, Tony was mad because I had to listen to the preview on replay, missed live, but didn't matter. Was laughing. Too bad. Couldn't have. The show was it was classic. It really was. I mean, that show last night. Brian said you got to listen to part 2 of the Hangover, or I'm sorry, Hangover. Jeez, talk about narcissist, Tony. Jeez, part 2 of the preview on Thursday night, and it was a hoot. Those guys were really cutting it up. Please check it out. But hey, Russ, I mean, if you miss it live, you can always go back and watch it on YouTube after the fact, and of course, as I said, all the audio platforms. Ryan O'Brien, that's a fun name. So anyway, back to the topics at hand and the big news of the week. And it's funny, every time I think I'm going to have one of those shows where I just do like maybe a full show of questions and answers and comments, or, one of those shows about like my favorite games of all time, or my favorite Steelers, or my favorite food to eat while I'm watching a game. Every time I plan on doing one of those kind of shows, something big happens right before my show, or at least a day or so before. And this week, it was the release of David DeCastro, the Steelers' longtime Pro Bowl guard, right guard. He was released on Thursday. It was a non-injury related or designated release. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Does that mean he was injured off the field? Does it mean he was injured? Or is it an old injury? I don't know what that designation means. All I know is it really came as a shock to me, and it probably shouldn't have, because the signs have been there all along. Last year it was a really off year for DeCastro. He only missed 3 games. I thought he missed more than that, but he only missed 3 games with an injury. But he just wasn't his usual Pro Bowl self, his usual All-Pro self. He's made first-team All-Pro twice in his career, and he just wasn't the same. You could tell in his interviews something was just off. The passion seemed to be gone, or lacking, or down for him. So and of course the mini camp that just concluded last week, he didn't participate. He didn't do anything. They brought in Trey Turner last week, and still I didn't think anything was up. I was of the mindset all off season that DeCastro, he was going to be okay. There was never any real talk of the injury lingering, whatever he was suffering. And we really didn't get a good. We didn't have much of an idea of what he was going through last year. They just described it as a lower body injury. Nobody really said much of what he was dealing with, at least as far as I know. I might have missed it, but I don't think I did, because it went on the entire year. Nobody really gave a specific injury that he was dealing with. So I just assumed that whatever he was going through last year was, since he didn't have surgery after the season, that it was cleared up, and he was 100% healthy, or about as healthy as you can be after a decade in the NFL, and that he would go back to being his usual Pro Bowl self at right guard and anchor that line and be the veteran presence that line needed, with everybody else being younger or inexperienced. So, I guess I should have seen it coming with everything that was going on with him and the visit with Trey Turner. But I was still thrown for a loop when I woke up from my mid-afternoon nap around 4:05 on Thursday to discover that, thanks to our Behind the Steel Curtain Slack channel, that he was released. And as it turns out, he was dealing with a bum ankle. He had surgery on it twice, earlier in his career, as he said in some interviews, and he's planning on having surgery again. And at this moment, as I'm talking right now, DeCastro still plans on playing somewhere. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. I mean, he's 31 years old. If this ankle has been bothering him off and on throughout his career, maybe he's at the point where he doesn't want to deal with it anymore, and He doesn't want to go through the rehab. Who knows what's going to happen after the surgery? He might just decide to call it a career, and he seems content with doing that if it comes down to that. So, yeah, that's a shocker. It was a shocker to me. Again, even though it shouldn't have been, it really did throw me for a loop. And now, if you look at that line, the one that everybody said was so awful last year, and it certainly had problems. It had problems opening up holes in the running game. It had problems protecting Ben Roethlisberger for longer than 2 seconds, it would appear, since he got rid of the football quicker than anybody in the league. But that line is no longer. When people say the line was horrible last year, well, they're talking about an entirely different unit, essentially. Because now with DeCastro gone, and I talked about this about a month ago or a few weeks ago on this show. You're going to have Shukes presumably at left tackle. You're going to have Kevin Dotson, the really promising second-year left guard, or at left guard. You're going to have, who knows, at center, hopefully Kendrick Green. And now I don't know who's going to play right guard other than Trai Turner, right? That's the guy they just signed. So you would assume he's going to be the right guard. And, of course, Zach Banner at right tackle. So it's an entirely different line. It's so to evaluate the Steelers' prospects in 2021, to evaluate this line and try to base it on anything that happened last year, you can't do it now. You just can't. It's a totally different ball game. It's a different book. It's a different whatever I'm trying to say. It's different. You have a different offensive line coach. You have a different assistant offensive line coach. You have a different approach, a more aggressive approach. You have a new offensive coordinator. So to evaluate this line based on last year, you just can't do it. So from that standpoint, it's going to be pretty interesting to see how things unfold. In my opinion, and this just might be me wearing my black and gold colored glasses, I think this line has a better chance of being more effective than that line from the late 2000s. Remember Justin Hartwig and Willie Colon and those guys. I can't even remember their names. Was it Darnell Stapleton, Chris Kiamato, whatever his name was? Those guys. That whole line. It was pretty abysmal. Ben was sacked a lot behind that line, and they had a devil of a time trying to pick up yards on short yardage situations. So, but I think this line has a chance to be better than that line. I think the pedigree is actually better in a lot of cases. Shukes is a 3rd round pick. Turner's well, in the past anyway, he was a multi-time Pro Bowl player. Zach Banner is a 4th round pick. Kendrick Green is a 3rd round pick. Obviously, Kevin Dotson's coming off of a fantastic rookie year. So I think this line has a chance to be better than that line from 12, 13 years ago. So there's hope in that regard. We can ask the question all we want. How's this line going to perform? What's it going to look like? How productive is it going to be? How effective is it going to be? But we're really not going to know now until these guys start playing in real games. And when I say real games, I mean preseason, which isn't a real game, but like preseason, until you see them in action, you're really not going to know how effective they can truly be. So, and that's topic number 1. Yeah, there you go. Russ Obenstein says Trey Essex, who I actually was a fan of. Max Starks, who was a bit of a celebrity. How could I forget about those guys? And let me try to say that name one more time. Chris Kimiato. I think I'm saying that right. Monka S says about the line, about the old days. Ben was slightly more mobile back then. Might be hard to be successful with him moving like a statue. Well, I'm not sure if he's as immobile as you think. I think he was just afraid to hold on to the football too long last year, maybe because of the liabilities within his line. So he got rid of the football quicker. But I think he's still fairly mobile. Maybe not like he was 10 years ago, but he's not a statue. To call Ben Roethlisberger a statue, I think is a bit disingenuous or misleading. So, and here's another one from Montcas. I don't see how our line can last a game versus a team like the Browns with all their pass rushers. That's just the thing, Montcas. We don't know. We don't know how this line's going to perform as a unit because it's an entirely different unit than it was last year. As far as in terms of personnel and in terms of where certain players are playing now. Shooks is on the left side now. A lot of people say he's more of a natural left tackle than he is a right tackle. Zach Banner's back, and he's going to get his first crack at a full season as a starter as a right tackle. Kevin Dotson's a full-time starter now, or at least you presume that he is. Trey Turner has no history with the Steelers, and we still have yet to determine who the center is going to be. So it's a completely different thing. So we don't know how this line is going to hold up against the Browns and their pass rusher front seven. It might do just fine. It might be a disaster. It might be like the Super Bowl with the Chiefs in their line. We just don't know. But we can't assume anything. We can't presume anything because we got to see these guys in action. We got to see how they develop under Adrian Clem, the new coach. We got to see how they respond to a more aggressive mindset with running the football and having more of a bully mentality than more of a passive mentality like they did under Sean Surratt and maybe even Munchak before him, as far as the kind of blocking schemes that they use. So we just don't know. We don't know. That's the fascinating part about this line is you can assume it's going to be bad based on experience, maybe even the pedigree, because you don't have a couple of first round picks and a couple of second round picks like you had before. You just don't know. So I think it'll be fascinating to see how it unfolds. But I guess my next topic is about DeCastro and him being the speaking of that late 00s line and how bad it was. Pittsburgh made a concerted effort starting in 2010 to rebuild that line. I mean, it wasn't just going to be about Ben Roethlisberger tweaking his game and becoming a different passer like Art II said after the 2011 season. It was about infusing that unit with talent, and Pittsburgh went years in between spending high draft picks on the offensive line. So Marquise Pouncey was a first round pick in 2010. He ushered in a whole new era. And then the following year, he had Marcus Gilbert come in, and he eventually became the starting right tackle. 2012, DeCastro fell in their laps as the 24th pick in the first round. He was a right guard. Ramon Foster, who was an undrafted free agent in 2009. I think 2011 was the year that he became a full-time starter, and he never left. He was so incredibly durable as a left guard, one of my all-time favorites. And, of course, eventually they settled on Al Villanueva at left tackle, and they became one of the premier units in the NFL as far as offensive lines. And they did their thing. DeCastro, if you read the interview he did on with Jim Wexell of Steel City Insider, he said his favorite time as a Steeler was those like mid-2010 teams with Bell and Brown and Martavis Bryant and all that offense all those points that they scored. It was a juggernaut, and one of the biggest reasons was because they had a line. Ben went from being sacked like 50 times a year to being sacked maybe 15 or 20. His sack percentage went from whatever it was to one of the best in the NFL. So I mean, that line was just an impressive unit, and they had multiple Pro Bowl players, obviously Pouncey, DeCastro, Villanueva. I think even Gilbert made a Pro Bowl or two. He was certainly one of the premier right tackles in the game for a time there. So with the release of DeCastro, he was the last domino to fall as far as that unit. So now what they built over the course of a few years in the early 2010s is now gone. So as I said earlier, we're certainly in a new era as it pertains to the Steelers' offensive line. Having said that, we know Pouncey was one of the best centers in team history. He that's the legacy he created during his career here. He became one of the premier centers in the history of the franchise, up there with Mike Webster and Dermontti Dawson. So my question is about David DeCastro is, what's his legacy going to be? Because he didn't, unfortunately for him, he didn't have the same trappings as an Alan Faneca. You know, he didn't get to make big plays in the Super Bowl and throw key blocks, right? And he really wasn't, you know, not that Alan Faneca was a huge personality, but he really wasn't even the same kind of personality as Alan Faneca. He really wasn't an accessible player. He wasn't a guy who connected with the fans really all that much. There's no question he's one of the best guards in the history of the team. But ultimately, what will his legacy be? Will he be a guy that gets enshrined in the team's Hall of Honor? Will he make it to the Hall of Fame? Will he be somebody that they honor every 10, 20 years when they have like reunions? You know, it'll be interesting to see, because if you remember like the 80s, you know, there were a lot of great players that came through here, but a lot of them are kind of forgotten because they didn't win Super Bowls. And it seems like Super Bowls often go hand in hand with how we remember players and how long we remember players and how fondly we remember them. So the fact that DeCastro didn't even appear in the Super Bowl, it might kind of tarnish his legacy a little bit, but I guess we'll have to wait and see how that unfolds. But he certainly had an impressive career here, and he certainly had a career that's one to be proud of. So good luck to David DeCastro and his endeavors moving forward. I hope for his sake that he gets to play again, because I think, once an athlete hangs him up, it's for good, usually, unless you're Brett Favre or James Harrison. But it's a hard thing. It's a hard void to fill once these guys retire and move on with their life's work. It's hard to fill that void. And he might be content right now, but 5-10 years from now, he might be thinking, geez, I wish I would have kept playing. I wish I would have tried to find a way to continue playing for another year or two. Because once you leave, you can't get back in. So good luck to him. And on that note, I will bid you adieu as far as the first half of tonight's show. If you're watching live on YouTube or Facebook, please don't go anywhere. I will be right back. If you're listening on an audio platform, I thank you for listening to part one, and I ask you please to download part two of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. And welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to part two of this episode of Steelers Friday Night Six Pack. I'm your host, Tony Defio, and if you listened to part one, I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I hope to bring you some great content for part two. And before I continue, I just want to bring up some comments regarding David DeCastro and Stacy Lynn, who's a regular. She says it would be great if DeCastro retired a Steeler, and it would be if that's what he wants to do. If that's in his heart that he wants to retire, retiring a Steeler would be great. But if he wants to continue to play, then I don't begrudge him that at all. Of course, he could go on and play somewhere and then come back and sign a one-day contract sometime down the road and retire a Steeler officially. A lot of guys have done that over the years. Brian Brown says DeCastro will make the Hall of Honor surely. You're probably right. You just never know, but I doubt that he will be excluded from that. He had one heck of a career. So, on that note, let's talk about Trey Turner. What do you think of the acquisition? I don't know much about the guy. I know he was a five-time Pro Bowler in the early portions of his career. And then he signed a pretty decent deal. Was still pretty consistent. And then he had some injury problems last year. He got traded to the Chargers. I guess he didn't quite live up to the hype or live up to their expectations, I should say, because he wasn't like hyped player. And they cut him after this year. And he was a free agent for a few months, really. And essentially it took the DeCastro release to get him under contract for 1 year. I think it's for 1 year for $3 million. So what do you think of him? Are you comfortable with him as a veteran right guard for 2021? I'm okay with it. I'm fine with it. I mean, he seems like a fairly reliable player as far as his play on the field. As far as the injury history, it wasn't as bad as I thought. I know last year was pretty bad for him as far as injuries, but by and large, he was averaging about 13 games a year up until last year. So that's not too bad when you consider the how tough it is to play in the trenches in the NFL. So I commend the Steelers for going out and picking up a guy like that, because that to me that he might not be David DeCastro, but if David DeCastro was dealing with an ankle injury, how good would he have been anyway? So is Trey Turner David DeCastro in his prime? Is he that level of a player? No, but he's certainly better than David DeCastro was last year, and probably how he would have been this year. So I think in that regard, they at least, it doesn't seem like it, but they upgraded that position for 2021 based on how it would have been with an injury riddled or an injury. David DeCastro who was dealing with a chronic ankle injury. So I like the move as far as that's concerned. Dave Shipley asks, our depth inside is okay, but tackles? Well, I don't know. I know Haig. He's not just an interior lineman. He can play tackle. I know he played tackle for the Buccaneers. So I think he can be your swing tackle. So I'm okay with him as far as a backup. I think he's had a pretty decent career as far as a journeyman kind of lineman. To me, he seems like a cheaper version of Matt Fowler, and I'm okay with that. So here's one from Brian Brown regarding Trey Turner's time with the Panthers. I watched some Carolina footage. He's a brute, pushes people around. Well, there you go. That falls in line with what the Steelers are trying to do now, the philosophy they're trying to have in terms of being more aggressive and being more physical in the ground game. So maybe he'll fit right in with that philosophy. We can only hope. So. And the next topic I wanted to touch on is the fact that the Steelers will not have training camp in Latrobe for the second year in a row because the NFL didn't approve their COVID protocol for St. Vincent College. I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe it's because it's such an open area. That could be to me, that's the number one reason I can think of. It's an open area. Maybe it's hard logistically to have social distancing and have a lot of fans there watching the practices. As far as the players are concerned, I know the fans can get right up and close. They can get up close to the players at St. Vincent's, but that's something that could be fixed if you're instituting if you're employing protocols for the virus. You could certainly make it that fans couldn't get close to the players. So to me, it has to be, they don't want to create an environment where there are a lot of people bunched together milling around. That's the only thing I can think of. As far as how I feel about it, I mean, I don't know. I'm okay with it because I know Pittsburgh. I know the Steelers organization, and they've already announced that they plan on being back there in 2022. And if anybody thinks that that's just lip service, I know the organization, and I know how much they value having training camp up in Latrobe, but I know how much the community values having that every summer. So by next year, this will all be gone. We should presume or assume it's all going to be gone. So I just think it's one more year to endure it, and after that, then it'll be back to normal starting in 2022. And to me, it's a small sacrifice not having training camp at Latrobe. It's a minor thing. It's 40 miles away from Pittsburgh. So if you really wanted to come to and watch a training camp, provided that you're allowed to watch it at Heinz Field, to me, I think that's a good trade-off. Going an extra 40 miles, depending on where you're coming from. If you're coming from the west, it's going to be even closer. I don't know how they're gonna regulate that as far as Heinz Field. I don't think they're gonna have anybody showing up on the south side campus, but as far as Heinz, you can make that work. And if they open up enough practices to the public, to me, that's a pretty decent trade-off. To me, I'm just more stoked about the fact that we're going to have preseason again, a full preseason, and more than likely full stadiums in the fall for the regular season. To me, that's more important than fans being at training camp. I realize it's an experience, and a lot of people they plan their vacations around that, or at least they did prior to 2020. But again, it's just a minor inconvenience during this unusual time, and we'll all be back to normal next year. I'm not, I shouldn't say this, but I'm personally stoked because now I don't have to drive an hour and a half out to Latrobe and pay tolls and all that stuff. If I want to go, I could park my car in the West End and walk over the West End Bridge, check out a practice or two, report my findings to Twitter, like I know what I'm talking about, and then walk home and not have to spend any money on parking or anything like that. So to me, I'm personally excited that it's going to be local, and I don't have to feel guilted into making that long drive, because I don't like that long drive. I'm just going to keep it real. I don't like that long drive to Latrobe. So those are all the topics I have for tonight, and I will spend the next 10 minutes or so taking some comments and questions from you guys. Let's see what you guys have. Here's a comment from Russ Oberstein regarding training camp, and he says NFL had tough decisions to make and are just trying to keep people safe. Exactly. I mean, to me, it's a minor thing, and to me, what would you rather have? Training camp open to the public, or a full stadium of games, or a full stadium of fans, I should say, once the regular season begins? To me, I'll take the latter, honestly, And like I said, to reiterate, the Rooney family is not going to, I think a lot of people were afraid that this is going to become a habit. Like, all right, we've had training camp locally 2 years in a row. That's how it's going to be forever. They're not going to do that. They're an organization that embraces tradition, that honors tradition, that loves tradition, that really, again, that realizes how important this is to the community up in Latrobe and the St. Vincent College, that area. They're not going to abandon it. I mean, look at the Cowboys. And, look at their facility that they have, the Jerry Dome, and yet they're still traveling states away to have their training camp. So if the Cowboys are going to do that, why can't the Steelers maintain their training camp 40 minutes away? So I don't think we have anything to worry about as far as that's concerned. It'll be back next year. Here's a big one from Lumberzack, and he says, how do you feel about DeCastro potentially filing a grievance against the Steelers? Personally, I hope it doesn't happen, but I understand literally no one should be questioning his loyalty, though. I mean, that's just all business. I mean, that stuff happens all the time when you're dealing with unions, and, it's nothing personal. Alan Faneca left here, under bad terms. He was angry about his contract. He left here, bitter a little bit. They made amends. James Harrison, he couldn't have left, under any uglier circumstances, and they're probably going to be fine. Troy Polamalu in the organization kind of had some rough feelings. At least he did reportedly towards the organization or although he's recently come out and said it really wasn't that way, but there probably was a little bit of that, and they're fine. So I mean, if he follows the grievance, he follows the grievance. To me, that's not going to change my opinion of him. When these players do that, I don't think we as fans should take that personally. That's just business. I mean, unless they file a grievance against me, I don't care what they do with the organization. That's their business. That's their livelihood. And again, it's just business. So it wouldn't bother me. I mean, if you read the interview, I mean, he basically said, look, it's a business. My ankles hasn't been right for quite some time. I have to have surgery again. So why he would file a grievance? I don't know. I don't know where you heard that from, but that's the first I'm hearing that. But you must have seen it somewhere. I don't know. So, and here's one from Dave Shipley. Tony, all the troubles happen in the South Side. That's why I like the Latrobe setting, 2,000 bars and 21 blocks. I live on Carson Street. Man, I want to party with you. I love that area. But yeah, I mean, that's a good point, I guess. But how much trouble can they get in? How is it going to be any different than during the regular season? I mean, when they're going, they have free reign every night during the week to go out and get drunk and party. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think if you want to party bad enough, you're going to find a way, whether it's at Latrobe or on Carson Street. So, and there's a lot of bars up that way that are certainly notorious hangouts for these players and coaches. And, so I don't know. I'm not that worried about that. And here's here's one from Lumbersack. I wish more people thought like you, Tony. I don't know. I think I thank you for that. I take it as a compliment, but I think a lot of people would want me to shut up. But that's cool. But the Beehive is in Latrobe, though. There you go. That's a great point by Lumbersack. I've never heard of that place, but I've heard it must be a pretty happening spot. Here's one from Reginald Rivers, and he asks, how many undrafted free agents will make the roster? That's a good question. There's certainly maybe Shakur Brown. There's a lot of hype for him. Lamont Wade. I don't know. That's a tough question to answer. I honestly don't know. I know they have issues with depth at a lot of positions. So if you're an undrafted free agent, you certainly have a chance to come in and make an impact that way and show the organization that maybe you have potential to be a solid backup and maybe more down the road. I don't know. I think maybe corners. I don't know. I don't think that many, honestly, are going to be able to come in and make this roster, but who knows? Because I'm overly optimistic about them. A lot of people are overly pessimistic. So if you would ask somebody like that, they might say there's a great chance for a lot of undrafted free agents to make the roster. And Steelers Pittsburgh says, let's see if Haskins finds out about the strippers in Pittsburgh. That's, of course, a joke about Haskins' time in Washington last year where he was caught. Not caught. He wasn't arrested, but it was found out that he was partying with strippers during a pandemic, and that is what helped get him released from the organization. I mean, believe me, Dwayne Haskins isn't the first football player to go to a strip club, and certainly he doesn't need any help finding that one of those establishments if he really wanted to. And here's one from Brian Brown. Says, wow, partying with a 21-year-old tomorrow might miss the show. Okay, well, good for you, man. Good for you. That's your scene. I'm way too old for that stuff. Russ Obenstein answers Reginald Rivers, or he says, that's a great question. Thinking 2 or 3, Shakur Brown and Gilbert, then maybe Wade. There you go. those are certainly the most highly thought of the current crop of undrafted free agents. So we'll see. That's why I'm so excited. We have 5 weeks to go before training camp starts, and then whether it's at Latrobe or in Pittsburgh, we're gonna find out a lot about these guys, and we're probably gonna have more access than we did last year. Remember, last year it was basically word of mouth as far as what was going on at training camp. Even though it was right at Heinz Field, we just had to rely on the local reporters and the national reporters to give us information about that. But this year, if it's open to the public, if the reporters are allowed better access, then we're certainly going to have a lot better information. So I certainly can't wait. And of course, once the preseason starts in a little over a month, we're going to get to see for ourselves how a lot of these young players are going to do. So Russ Obenstein asks, are there any O-line guys that are undrafted free agents? I'm trying to think. I can't remember who they signed in that regard. I'm not sure. I'm honestly not sure. But I think they have a lot of exciting young players as far as their O-line, obviously with Dotson and Green. And I'm more excited than a lot of people about Banner and Shooks. So, yeah. Somebody's birthday, BB, happy birthday. I don't know whose birthday it is, but whoever it is. Oh, here we go. And this is a follow-up from Brian Brown. And he says, oh, God, I just realized how awful that comment was. The 21-year-old is my son. Well, I'm glad you cleared that up, Brian. But, hey, if it wasn't your son, nobody's judging. It's a judge-free zone. But happy birthday to your son. That's a big age. I remember some guy told me at a local park after I turned 21, he said, he didn't say son, but I'm saying, he said, son, after 21, it's all downhill. And he was mostly right for me anyway, but hopefully your son becomes famous someday and proves that statement wrong. And Russ says, I can't remember either. I don't think there are any offensive linemen that were undrafted free agents, honestly. So, and on that note, it's what time is it? 9:43. I'm a little hungry. I'm not going to lie. I think I'm going to call it a night. It was a productive show. It was a fun show. We learned about some haunts up around St. Vincent College. So even though there's not training camp this year, maybe I'll go check it out because I'm way above 21, so I can go party wherever I want. And maybe I'll spend some, maybe I'll pay some tolls and go check those bars out. So that was good information. We learned a little bit about Trai Turner. We talked about David DeCastro. So I think it was a fine show. And I had a lot of fun with you guys. Thank you for joining me. And until I talk to you again on Monday on The Hangover with Brian and Shannon White. Shannon White, by the way, if you haven't checked out the two most recent shows with Shannon, he's our new co-host. The guy's fantastic. He knows his football. He played. He talks a lot more concise than I do, so I'm jealous. But whatever, I can learn from him and try to talk a little bit slower. But the guy is just a fantastic addition, and he'll be with us on Monday and on every other Monday moving forward. So please check us out this Monday. And of course, again, check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website. Check out our family of audio podcasts. Check out our family of live podcasts. And have a great weekend. And as always, go Steelers. You guys are awesome.